Hey y'all. So just going over some of my favorite options for this month's Cavalier event quest. It's a bit late in the month, but you may have noticed that a little thing called the Grandmaster's Gauntlet came out. You may have gone through it yourself, and that took some time to address properly. Anyway, so I really like Surfer here because the idea of the Cosmic Node is that falter that you see there every 10 hits, and you have a chance to get this Vigilance on every hit, and the chance goes up for every buff you have. So Surfer has a ton of buffs, and so he's a great option for it. I also used one of the Odin pre-fights on him. Even so, he's great. He is actually absurd for this quest, and in general, if you use all three pre-fights on him, because he has abilities triggering on his L1 and his L2 that trigger if he has three or more unique buffs, and if he has those up, he always has three or more unique buffs. And then he does damage on every hit based on how many buffs he has. And as you saw with that last L2, a few extra buffs really helps. So, highly recommend Surfer. But here we have the reason I only used the Amplitude on him, which was that I needed two for Tigra for this Elsa boss, because there's buffed up on this. Now there's also Combo Party, which is interesting because it implies that anybody should be able to take it, except that Tigra's Neutralize, when she hits the opponent, reduces opponent buff ability accuracy, but that actually affects nodes like Combo Party, and it also affects the node here that you're supposed to gain a buff when you dash back. And so that actually makes this node really annoying to play straight ahead with her. Yeah, that spacing was just wrong. But it makes this node really annoying to play straight ahead with her unless you have these two Odin pre-fights, because then that's two buffs, and then you only need to get one up, and unblockable can count for you to do full damage. So she kind of dodged the first part of my L2 there, but as you can see, we're off here because it's really easy to heavy counter her L1. I don't know why I didn't there. I must have just not been super confident with the spacing. But you can also heavy counter her heavy, as long as you're not too close like I was at the very start of this. And yeah, this is just a really simple fight that Tigra should not be able to take for the reasons I outlined. But I just like creatively using the Odin pre-fights, because while they are not always the most useful things in the game, I think that they are really interesting and they can have some cool uses. And when the payoff is that I can use Tigra where I normally wouldn't, to me that's worth it. There are, of course, tons of champions that you can use here. Like I said, the node was clearly designed so that pretty much anyone can take it as long as you just play safely enough. So next up we have the Mutant quest, and there are a lot of options for this. You know, it basically just prioritizes unblockable attacks, heavy attacks, special attacks, a lot of things that mutants are actually quite good at, but it also prioritizes prowess, and to me that meant Horseman Storm, because that unblockable lasts longer when you have more prowess. She generates unblockable hits on her own. This was just so much fun with her. I mean, this Korg was probably the funniest one because of those crits right there and just how quickly it was over. But none of the fights were really that difficult. So if you have her, especially if you have Apocalypse, I would give it a shot. Super fun. She also works great for the boss. The way to get bigger numbers on this is, for one thing, to not hit her block. That was very stupid because now it means that whenever I don't crit, my damage is getting hampered significantly. But the other way to get big numbers out of this is to go to the L3 and then the L2. I just didn't do that this time because I think that the importance of that particular rotation is sometimes overstated with Storm-X. And so I like to see what can work if you just stick to the L1 and the L2. That said, I didn't have amazing crit luck on these, so the L3 and then one of the others would have definitely been the faster route. So there I just wasn't nailing some parries, let her gain some extra power. My fault. So there I'm kind of flirting with danger there by letting the Furies build up from the node. If I get too many of them, I will start degenning. But I really like the damage you get from canceling out of the heavy animation into the special with her. And so because I only had 5, it felt like it was worth it. But just be aware of that, because if you have more of and you start doing that, remember that the heavy has to actually land for you to get rid of the Furies. You could also, of course, use the attrition masteries here, since she would heal up from the bleed as a horseman. She's really not bad with them. And if you focus on the L3, you're not throwing that many specials, so recoil doesn't hurt that much. I just really don't enjoy using those in general. Next quest is the one that favors tech attackers. I really wasn't much of a fan of this node. Just the unblockable after specials, unless they have a shock on them, was really not that fun. I mean, there are a lot of champions that are great for it. I actually used Darkhawk as well with the Night Thrasher synergy, and he starts out, if he starts out in null mode, you know, you have that 1 in 3 chance, then the extra damage he does is actually coded as a shock debuff. And so if you punish an opponent's special fast enough, it turns off the unblockable. And that was actually very fun. But there were also a lot of other fights where he didn't start in null mode and I had significantly less fun. Mysterio also works, Guardian is fantastic, but if you have Warlock, it feels like the node was built for him, just use him. You know, if you're facing an opponent that it was not as easy as that Professor X, then in that case just stick to the L1 to make sure you get that power drain and the shocks up, but either way, pretty easy. So this Blade boss has been giving a lot of people problems. Archangel is amazing for it. Warlock himself is pretty good. There are a lot of options. I personally just really enjoy using Apocalypse, especially on power shield nodes, and so this worked out great for me. Most of the times I took this, I actually did not have 4 genetic code, but it didn't feel unrealistic to bring Cable for this one, even though my Cable is just an unranked 5-star, because Cable also has a really good synergy with Warlock. And so if you're bringing Warlock and Apocalypse, you can probably fit Cable on the team. I also brought White Magneto just so I didn't have to worry about Blade making the stuns shorter under certain circumstances, but that's not at all necessary for this fight. So really all we're trying to do here is make sure we get a bunch of specials. On that last stun through block, I could have heavied, but I was pretty sure I would get another one in time. We are not building to the L2 because of Power Alternator. We're just going to make sure we get off as many L1s as we can. The tricky quote part about this node is definitely as he gets lower, but Apocalypse is very good for that with 4 charges especially, because you can just, because you can stun through block, throw a heavy, and then throw a special. Whoever you use to take this node, remember that all specials for both characters are unblockable. And so you never need to worry about lining up a good time and waiting for the Lifecycle shield to come back. You can just throw it if you have it. But the other thing here, as you may notice, is that because I have the Deep Wounds Mastery, the direct damage it does is actually bypassing Lifecycle, and I was able to finish him off just by throwing heavies without having to line up another special. So that was pretty fun. The Mystic quest, I really wasn't a fan of this node either, honestly. Claire works pretty well, Doom works pretty well, Sorcerer is far and away the best, especially if you bring the any of the Marvel Realm of Champions characters like Storm X or Centurion or Jabari, because then she starts with a bar of power. You can use the pre-fight to start in her armor mode, the Ragador one, and then she starts with regen on block. Every time you block a hit and it does any damage, she will regen. That will power drain the opponent, which will get around their protection based on power. She will gain a passive fury. As you can see in that fight, I actually also never lost the Nullify aura because Voodoo pauses it during special attacks, and that's how many special attacks I was throwing. Overseer really doesn't seem like he's going to be that dangerous a defender, but he does have a pretty potent auto block, and he does have this annoying thing where he puts those concussions on you just for special attacks, and I don't want to deal with those. He also has those taunts, and if the taunts are allowed to expire, he puts stifles on you so you get fewer specials. Didn't want to deal with that either. So my answer here was Killmonger, with the Void synergy to give him that chance of shrugging it. It's not a perfect Purify, and you're gonna have some other problems, but the ability to pair that fairly reliable Purify with True Strike really made this fight extremely easy. As you can tell, I'm also taking advantage of the counterpunch charges to get easy openings. I'm taking advantage of the indestructible charges to make sure that when I block, it's not doing much damage. This is actually a very fun fight. I've been fairly lucky on the Purifies so far. Only a single special concussion has stuck halfway through the fight. It could go worse. It could also go better. I also used Tigra a few times through here because it's always fun when she works. But I know someone else has made a video of that already, so I figured I'd try Killmonger. And then right there, I accidentally showed off a beautiful aspect of him, which is those indestructible charges. Took 3 hits to the face, they did no damage, and ended up just giving us power to let us throw that special 3. And now we're doing a bunch of bleeds. Probably could have waited a little longer and made sure I had a few more bleeds, and then it would have finished him. But honestly, getting hit threw me a little bit, and I was like, well, I've got True Strike and Reverb up, might as well go for it. It also doesn't really matter, because unless you're facing like the 631 Medusa boss, you rarely need to kill someone with the bleed damage from that L3. It's just a bonus, and then you can finish them off normally. So the science one was so much fun for me this month. I think every node they've given us so far has made it really easy to use Reed with the full Fantastic Four team, but this one was no exception. Magic can be a pain, but watch how quickly this fight ends. I am also running the Petrify Mastery maxed, so in addition to the 25% reduction in combat power rate from Reed's suppression pre-fight, she's gaining 30% less power while stunned, and my heavies are landing entirely within that stun. Notice every time I'm hitting her while she has that Petrify and the weakness, I'm gaining a Fury. When she's trying to gain power while under the Petrify, I'm gaining a Fury, so we're already up to 10. We've hit 7 times. I probably could have finished that fight in single-digit hits if I had just waited, but it was more fun to throw the L2. 11 hits for a magic in Cavalier Event Quest. So the Gilly 99 boss in this chapter is a little annoying. She kind of counters some of the usual options, but if you have a torch and you can use his pre-fight, he's fantastic for it, especially if you're comfortable intercepting. You just want to get that temperature up so that you don't miss. I actually intentionally didn't do it right away because I didn't feel like knocking her down. Because then every time, if I wanted to go for a parry, then she would have gained power because of empowered immunity. I just didn't feel like doing that until I had more temperature. I go for it there because now I've blocked one of the L1s. I have another Smolder. I know my temperature will go down a little slower. I get the intercept there. Dodge that one because I figure that's enough, and notice my temperature is staying high pretty well, so I didn't have to worry in that cycle. Messed up that evade, but I figure it was fair. If you see two nice intercepts, then you can also see that I sometimes get hit by that. Torch is cleanly reversing the healing, and this fight is done with the power stings. He's really a fantastic option here. There are others, but I think he might be the best. So going into the skill quest, which I believe is the last one, I actually have two different path fights here because I personally found both Elsa and Kingpin very fun for this one, and I thought it was worth showcasing them both. This node just puts a bunch of debuffs on you without giving you the ability to heal from them, and some of them are pretty annoying and they're all pretty long, so you really want some kind of purify. Going back to Killmonger with the Void Synergy, he can work here, but I actually really did not enjoy it, because if the Disorient sticks, it reduces your defensive ability accuracy, and it lasts long enough that it seemed to mess with his Purify for all the others. Whereas Elsa just flat out gets rid of them, she gains those precisions from it, she lands more crits, and she just wipes out the defender. She also doesn't care that much about the heal block because she doesn't have to take much block damage by using her evade counter to get free openings. I did bring the Hood Synergy for Kingpin because it makes his Purify more reliable, and I don't think that that's unrealistic here because you have room on the team, and Kingpin is just going to be so good for these fights that it doesn't really matter that you have someone you're not using. But notice, every time that node comes around, we get another rage. And this is actually a buffet lane as well. So you can see that Gulk just healed there, but that's not going to matter in the slightest. Now, I could have gone the tactical route there and thrown his L1 because it reduces ability accuracy and maybe would have turned off the next couple buffet procs, but I didn't feel that it was necessary because going the L2 allows me to build rage more quickly, and as you can see, Kingpin's just hitting nice and hard. This time I went for the L1 because I figured I could probably get him down before going through another full rage cycle, but, you know, it's really up to you. Not bad for somebody who has no true counter to healing. Purgatory was definitely my favorite boss fight out of all of these. The fact that she already gains less power in hits, and that so much of her power gain is from a passive when hits are landed, means that when you use Reed's natural Petrify and his natural Suppression to cut down on that power gain and reduce the power she gets from being hit even further, she was basically shut down this whole fight. I mean, you'll watch this. I believe this is the fight I had where she didn't get a single bar of power the entire time. Now, this is not Reed with any synergies. Notice there's no constant damage a la Void from the full Fantastic Four. This is just him with his pre-fights playing nice and slow and not having to deal with her demonic rampage, not having to deal with any of her specials, just doing reliable damage the whole time. Now here, that wasn't very wise. It's not really a good idea to do step back specials until you're sure of an opponent's animations and how likely they are to follow through on a combo versus just dodging back like she did there. But that said, you saw how the high evade chance Reed has came in handy, because she did have 9 debuffs on her, and so Reed had a 45% chance to evade, and he did. So you'll notice here that I think she actually lost power there in one spot, but what I was going for here was just to keep her under 1 bar until I got that special 3, throwing it with all of those different debuffs up. Yeah, because I had the stun as well, that's actually 10 debuffs, so that's a really large fury and then I can just finish this off. And even with me going ham at the end there, and just comboing, she still didn't get to a bar of power. So there's one path fight and one of each of the bosses from this month. Hope that either is interesting, teaches you something, maybe gives you a counter for something you were having trouble with, and I'll catch you guys next time.